The stars looked the same as they always did, cold, distant, beautiful in their silence. Lieutenant Commander Lee Hanna pressed her palm against the observation window of the UES Silent Dawn and watched the endless darkness of space. She had been doing this for 3 years now, ever since Earth sent her first deep space mission beyond the solar system. "Ma'am, we're approaching the Kepler 442 system," called Sergeant Park Minho from his station. His voice carried the same steady calm that had kept her crew alive through 6 months of reconnaissance missions. "Long-range sensors are picking up some unusual energy readings." Hanna turned away from the window. At 28, she was young, for a lieutenant commander, but her face showed the wisdom that came from growing up in Seoul during the early days of humanity's expansion into space. Her grandmother had taught her that true strength came not from the sword, but from knowing when to use it. "What kind of readings, Minho?" "Unknown, ma'am. The patterns don't match any human technology we know about." Communications Officer Kim Jiwoo looked up from her console, worry creasing her young features. "Commander, I'm not picking up any response to our standard greeting signals. Whatever's out there, it's not talking to us." Hanna nodded slowly. This was what they had come here for. Earth had sent the Silent Dawn to explore the outer systems because strange ships had been spotted near human colonies. Ships that didn't belong to any known human faction. Ships that seemed to be watching. "Take us to Yellow Alert," Hanna ordered. "Keep our weapons powered down but ready. If there's someone out there, I want to talk before we fight." The bridge. Crew moved with practiced efficiency. 12 people who had become like family during their long journey through the black. Hanna had handpicked each of them. Park Minho, her sergeant, who could fix anything and shoot straighter than anyone she had ever met. Kim Jiwoo, barely 22 but brilliant with communication systems. Chief Engineer So Dae-hyun, who treated the ship's engines like his own children. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Tactical Officer Yoon Sung-ho. "It's big, Commander. Really big." Hanna moved to the main display screen. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. The ship that emerged from behind Kepler 442b was massive beyond anything humanity had ever built. It looked like a giant metal mountain floating in space, covered in strange symbols that glowed with purple light. Gun ports lined its hull like hungry mouths. "By all the ancestors," whispered Minho, "that thing could eat our entire fleet for breakfast." "Hail them," Hanna ordered, keeping her voice steady even though her heart was racing. "All frequencies. Let them know we come in peace." Jiwoo's fingers flew over her console. "Broadcasting. On all channels, Commander. Standard greeting protocols in 17 languages." They waited. The silence stretched between the two ships like a held breath. The alien vessel hung in space, dark and threatening, while the tiny human ship tried to make contact. Then the world exploded into light. The tractor beam hit the Silent Dawn with the force of a giant's hand. Hanna felt the deck plates vibrate under her feet as the ship's engines screamed in protest. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in red as systems overloaded throughout the ship. "They've got us," Sung-ho reported, his voice tight with controlled panic. "Tractor beam is too strong, we can't break free." "All stop," Hanna ordered. "Don't fight it, save power for life support." She turned to Jiwoo. "Get a message out, Priority Alpha. Tell Earth Command what we found here." "I'm trying, ma'am, but they're jamming everything. Nothing's getting through." Hanna watched the alien ship grow larger on the screen as they were pulled toward its massive cargo bay. She had trained for this moment her entire military career, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of first contact going wrong. "Listen to me. All of you," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the bridge. "We knew this might happen. We're soldiers of Earth and we represent all of humanity today. Whatever happens next, we face it with honor." The cargo bay of the alien ship was enormous. The Silent Dawn looked like a toy boat floating in an ocean of metal and strange machinery. As soon as they were inside, the bay doors closed with a sound, like thunder, sealing them in. "Boarding parties incoming," reported Sung-ho. "Lots of them." Hanna could see them on the external cameras. Tall figures in dark armor moved toward their ship with military precision. They carried weapons that hummed, with energy and moved like soldiers who had done this many times before. "Weapons ready," Hana ordered quietly. "But wait for my command. Maybe we can still talk our way out of this." The airlock chimed as something powerful began cutting through the outer door. The sound of metal being sliced apart filled the ship. Hana drew her sidearm and positioned herself where she could see the entrance. The door fell inward with a crash that shook the entire ship. The beings that came through were nightmares made real. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in scales that gleamed like black metal. Their eyes burned yellow in faces that belonged in humanity's oldest fears about monsters in the dark. The lead creature spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Surrender, mammals. You are prisoners of the Krillian Empire now." "I am Lieutenant Commander Lee Hana of the United Earth Space Force," she replied, keeping her weapon lowered but ready. "We came here peacefully. Why are you attacking us?" The creature that she would later learn was called War Captain Vextar tilted its massive head. "Your kind spreads through the galaxy like a disease. The Empire has decided you must be contained. We can discuss this," Hana said. "There doesn't have to be violence." Vextar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans, always talking when you should be dying." He raised his weapon, and Hana knew talking time was over. "Now," she shouted. The bridge of the Silent Dawn became a battlefield. Human weapons flashed against alien armor. Sergeant Minho threw himself in front of the ship's data core, his rifle chattering as he tried to buy time for the others. Kim Jiwoo screamed as an energy bolt took her in the chest, but her fingers never stopped moving on her console, trying to get one message through to Earth. Hana fought like the tiger her grandmother had always said lived in her heart. She moved between cover, placing shots where alien armor was weakest, but there were too many of them. One by one, her crew fell. Good people who had trusted her to bring them home. When it was over, 12 humans lay dead on the bridge of the Silent Dawn. Only Hana remained, wounded and surrounded, her weapon empty. Vextar looked down at her with something like amusement. "This one fought well for a mammal, keep her alive. The arenas on Torgash can always use new entertainment." As alien hands grabbed her arms, Hana smiled. It was not the smile of defeat, but the smile her grandmother had taught her to wear when enemies thought they had won. The smile that said she knew something they did not. The Krillians had captured her body, but her mind remained free, and a free human mind was the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. The transport ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Torgash. Through the small window, Hana could see a world that looked like it had been carved from nightmares. Redstone mountains rose from seas of black sand. The sky burned orange with volcanic ash. This was where the Krillian Empire sent beings they wanted to forget. "Welcome to your new home, human," sneered the guard. His scales were darker than the others, marking him as a veteran of many battles. "Most mammals last 3 days here. You look soft. I give you one." Hana said nothing. She had learned during the long journey that silence made her captors uncomfortable. They expected screaming, begging, threats. Instead, she watched and learned. The guards changed shifts every 6 hours. They were strongest in the morning but grew lazy as the day wore on. Small details that might matter later. The prison complex looked like a metal cancer growing from the mountain's side. Towers and walls twisted up the rocky slopes, connected by bridges that sparked with energy barriers. At the center, a massive arena opened to the sky like a hungry mouth. As the transport landed, Hana counted the guard positions she could see. 15 visible posts, probably twice that many hidden. Motion sensors swept the landing pad in overlapping patterns. Getting out would not be simple, but simple was not the same as impossible. The prison intake process was designed to break new arrivals. They stripped away her uniform and gave her gray rags that barely covered her body. They shoved her into a medical scanner that felt like being touched by cold fire. They took blood samples and scanned her with devices that hummed and clicked. "Interesting," muttered the technician, a smaller Krillian with scientist markings on his collar. "Her bone density is higher than expected. Muscle fibers show unusual development. This species might last longer than we thought." The intake officer barely looked up from his data pad. "Cell block 7, next." Cell Block 7 housed the prison's most dangerous inmates. The corridor reeked of fear and violence. Energy barriers hummed across cell doors, and something large was screaming in a language Hana did not recognize. Her cell was a metal box barely large enough for a human to lie down. The walls were covered in scratches that might have been writing, or might have been the desperate clawing of previous occupants. A narrow slit in the door let in a thin beam of red light. "Fresh meat," called a voice from across the corridor. "What crime brought you to paradise, little mammal?" Hannah looked through her door slit and saw the speaker. He was massive even by alien standards, with gray skin stretched over muscles like steel cables. Forearms ended in hands that could crush stone. His eyes held the cold intelligence of a born killer. "I defended my ship," Hana replied calmly. The creature laughed, a sound like boulders falling. "I am Captain Rexhull of the Mandorian war clans. I killed 17 Krillian admirals before they brought me down. What did you kill, little one?" "Nothing. Yet." This brought silence from the other cells. Then Rexhull laughed again, but this time there was something like respect in it. "I think I like you, human. Try not to die too quickly tomorrow." The next morning, guards came for Hana before the artificial sun reached its peak. They dragged her through corridors filled with the sound of machinery and the smell of recycled air. Other prisoners watched from behind energy barriers. Some looked hungry. Others looked sad. A few looked interested. The arena was even larger than it had seemed from outside. Rows of seats rose up the mountain walls, most of them empty at this early hour. The fighting floor was stained with the blood of countless battles. Sand soaked up the evidence of violence but could not hide the smell of death. "Your first match," announced the arena master, a fat Krillian who wheezed when he spoke. "Survive, and you eat tonight. Die, and feed the recyclers. Simple rules for simple minds." They pushed Hana into the center of the arena. The sand was hot under her bare feet. Above, a few early spectators settled into their seats to watch the new entertainment. Someone would die for their amusement, and they did not care who. Her opponent entered from the opposite gate. It was a Brutaxian, a species known for their size and savagery. This one stood nearly 10 feet tall and weighed at least 400 pounds. His hide was thick as armor, and his claws could cut through steel. The crowd perked up with interest. This might be fun to watch. The Brutaxian charged as soon as the barrier dropped. He moved fast for something so large, but Hana had expected that. Her grandmother's voice whispered in her memory. "Water flows around the mountain, child. Be water." Hana stepped aside at the last moment, letting the creature's momentum carry him past her. As he stumbled, she touched a specific point on his neck. Just a gentle pressure, no more than a caress. The Brutaxian took 3 more steps before his nervous system realized what had happened. He crashed to the sand like a falling tree, his massive body suddenly unable to obey his commands. He was not dead, but he would not be getting up. The arena fell silent. Even the guards stopped talking. Hana walked over to her fallen opponent and knelt beside his head. "Sleep well," she said softly in her own language. Then she pressed another point, and the Brutaxian struggles ended peacefully. The crowd exploded into noise. Some shouted in amazement, others in anger at being cheated of blood. The arena master was speaking rapidly into a communication device, his voice high with excitement. Guards surrounded Hana as she stood and brushed sand from her knees. She smiled at them, the same gentle smile she had worn since her capture. It made them nervous in ways they could not explain. Back in Cell Block 7, the other prisoners looked at her with new eyes. Captain Rexhull pressed his face against his door slit. "What are you?" he asked quietly. "I am Hana of Earth," she replied. "And I am exactly where I need to be." That night, as the prison settled into its artificial darkness, Hana lay on her narrow cot and began to plan. She had learned much in one day. The guards were predictable. The prisoners were desperate. The arena master was greedy for new entertainment. Most importantly, she had learned that the prison had a weakness its builders never suspected. They had assumed that keeping dangerous beings locked up was enough to control them. They had never considered what might happen if someone taught those beings to work together. Hana's smile grew wider in the darkness. The real game was just beginning. 3 months had passed since Hana arrived at Torgash, and the prison had never been quieter. In a place where violence was currency and screaming was the normal background noise, the sudden peace made the guards nervous. The change had started, small. A dispute between 2 Hissik assassins over territory had ended without bloodshed when Hana stepped between them. She had spoken quietly to each in their own language, words that somehow turned enemies into reluctant allies. The guards had watched in confusion as the 2 killers actually bowed to each other before walking away. "It makes no sense," muttered Guard Captain Zorth as he reviewed the daily reports. "Fights are down 70%. Medical calls have almost stopped. The prisoners are acting like civilized beings." His lieutenant shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe they're planning something big. A mass escape attempt." "No," Zorth said slowly. "It's something else. Something about that human female." In cell block 7, Hana sat cross-legged on her cot, teaching meditation techniques to a group of prisoners who had never heard such ideas before. Captain Rexhull, the massive Mandorian warrior, sat beside her with his forearms folded, trying to find inner peace for the first time in his violent life. "Breathe with your center," Hana said softly. "Feel the quiet place inside where anger cannot reach." Across from them, Engineer Zekmor, a nervous Velteran with too many eyes and not enough courage, attempted the breathing exercises. "This is foolish," he whispered. "Meditation will not break these energy barriers." "No," Hana agreed, "but it will clear your mind so you can think of what will." She had learned that Zekmor was not in prison for violence but for stealing technological designs from his government. His crime was curiosity, not cruelty. His engineering knowledge might prove useful, but first she needed to help him find his confidence. "Tell me about the prison's power systems," she said during one of their sessions. Zekmor's eyes brightened with interest. "The whole complex runs on geothermal taps deep in the mountain. Very efficient, very stable. The energy, barriers, the arena systems, life support, everything connects to the central power core. And if someone wanted to shut down specific systems without affecting others, theoretically possible, but you would need access to the maintenance levels. Only the cleaning crews go there, and they are all—" He paused, understanding dawning. In his many eyes, Hana smiled. "Yes, the skitterlings." The skitterlings were the prison's forgotten workforce. Small, insect-like beings with natural climbing abilities, they maintained the complex's vast network of tunnels and ducts. Most species ignored them, considering them barely intelligent. That was their first mistake. Hana had noticed them during her second week watching from vents and corners as she moved through the prison. Unlike the other species, they showed no fear or aggression toward her, only curiosity. She had started leaving small portions of her food near the vents. Not as charity, but as gifts between equals. The skitterlings had responded by leaving her small objects, a bent piece of metal that could be used as a tool, a fragment of circuitry that might have other purposes. One evening, the largest skitterling had approached her cell directly. His carapace was blue-green instead of the usual brown, marking him as some kind of leader. Hana had named him Blue in her mind, though his real name was too complex for human vocal cords. "You are different from the others," Blue had said in accented but clear Galactic standard. "You see us." "My grandmother taught me that the smallest creatures often know the most important secrets," Hana replied. Blue had tilted his head in a gesture that might have been laughter. "Your grandmother was wise. We know many secrets here." That conversation had been the beginning of everything that followed. The skitterlings became her eyes and ears throughout the prison. They moved through maintenance tunnels and air vents, carrying messages and gathering information. They learned which guards could be bribed, which systems had weaknesses, and most importantly, how the different prisoner groups could be brought together. In the arena, Hana continued to fight and win. Her reputation grew with each impossible victory. A Christek berserker whose skin could deflect energy weapons fell to a touch that disrupted his neural pathways. A phantom assassin who could bend light itself found that his invisibility meant nothing against someone who fought with senses beyond sight. The crowd loved her now. They called her the Smiling Death, and rich Krillians bet fortunes on her matches. The arena master had moved her to the evening shows, where the real money was made. But Hana's real work happened between the fights. In the holding cells and the meal halls during the brief exercise periods, she moved among the prisoners like water finding its own level. She listened to their stories, learned their languages, and slowly began to weave them together. She taught the Hissik assassins how Mandorian honor codes could help them control their killing instincts. She showed the Mandorian warriors how Velteran engineering could make their strength more effective. She helped the Velterans understand that true intelligence included emotional wisdom. "What is your plan, human?" Captain Rex Hull asked one night as they sat in the darkness. "I see you building something, but I do not understand what." "My grandmother used to tell me about a thing called water torture," Hana replied. "One drop at a time it seems harmless, but eventually it breaks even the hardest stone. And we are the drops of water. We are the ocean." Far above the prison world, the search continued. Engineer So Hyunwoo and Dr. Choi Minji worked around the clock aboard the UES Retribution, following energy traces and intercepted communications. They had identified the Krillian transport route and were closing in on Torgash. "She's alive," Dr. Choi said with certainty as she analyzed the latest intelligence reports. "These gladiatorial broadcast signals include human biomarkers. It has to be her." Captain Nam Jiseok studied the tactical display. "Even if we find her, getting her out will not be simple. That prison is built like a fortress." "Then we make sure she knows we're coming," So Hyunwoo replied. "Hana always said the best rescue is the one where the prisoner rescues themselves." Back on Torgash, Hana received confirmation that her message had been received. Blue brought word that unusual energy signatures had been detected at the edge of the system, Earth ships moving carefully but steadily toward the prison world. "How long do we have, Ro?" she asked Blue during one of their secret meetings in the maintenance tunnels. "Days, perhaps weeks. The Krillian fleet will intercept them long before they reach orbit." Hana nodded. She had expected as much. Her rescue would not come from outside. It would come from within, when the ocean finally crashed against its walls. "Begin the final preparations," she told Blue. "Send word to all our friends. The time for patience is almost over." Blue clicked his mandibles, and what she had learned was agreement. "The network is ready, Lee Hana. When you give the signal, every tunnel and every vent will carry our warriors." That night, as Hana performed her evening meditation, she thought about her grandmother's teachings, about water finding its way through the smallest cracks, about how the gentlest pressure, applied at the right point, could move mountains. The Krillians had built their prison to hold the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. But they had made one crucial error. They had assumed that dangerous meant violent, that strength meant brutality, that control meant domination. They were about to learn that the most dangerous being in the galaxy was not the one who could kill the most enemies, but the one who could turn enemies into allies. And Lee Hana had just finished building an army. Inquisitor Maltek arrived at Torgash on a ship that cut through space like a blade through silk. His reputation preceded him throughout the Krillian Empire. Where other officials used brute force, Maltek used his mind. He could break any being's will without leaving a mark on their body. The prison's command staff gathered in the main briefing room, their scaled faces showing the nervousness they tried to hide. Warden Gorthak stood at attention, his claws clicking against his ceremonial armor. "Explain to me," Maltek said in his voice like silk over steel, "how a single human has disrupted the most secure prison facility in the Empire." "She fights well in the arena," Gorthak replied carefully. "The crowds enjoy her matches. Revenue is up 40% since her arrival." Revenue. Maltek's yellow eyes glowed with cold light. "While prisoner violence has dropped to almost nothing. While different species that have warred for centuries now sit together peacefully. While your guards report feeling watched even when they see no one." The silence stretched like a held breath. Finally, Arena Master Vorkith spoke up. She uses some kind of mental influence, perhaps a psychic ability unknown to our scientists. Perhaps, Maltek agreed, which is why I will speak with her directly. They brought Hana to the Inquisitor's chamber in the deepest part of the prison. The room was designed to break minds, white walls that seemed to stretch forever, light that came from everywhere and nowhere, furniture that shifted when you weren't looking directly at it. Maltek sat behind a curved desk that seemed to be made from a single piece of black crystal. Neural probe equipment surrounded his chair like the arms of a metal spider. When Hana entered, he studied her with the intensity of a scientist examining a new species. Sit, he commanded. Hana sat in the chair across from him, her hands folded, calmly in her lap. She had prepared for this moment since her capture began. Everything depended on the next few hours. You intrigue me, human, Maltek said. Lesser species usually scream when they enter this room. You seem almost peaceful. My grandmother taught me that fear is just excitement without proper breathing, Hana replied. Your grandmother. Yes, I have read your file. An interesting family history. Military service going back generations. But also something else. Philosophy. Meditation. Arts that most warrior species consider weakness. Do you consider them weakness? Maltek smiled, showing teeth like polished obsidian. I consider them tools. The question is whether you know how to use them properly. He activated the neural probe with a gesture. The machine unfolded from the ceiling, its sensors focusing on Hana's head like the eyes of a predator. She felt the familiar tingle as it began to map her neural pathways. Fascinating, Maltek murmured as data flowed across his screens. Your brain shows modifications I have never seen before. Cybernetic implants, but so seamlessly integrated they appear almost organic. What did Earth do to you? They trained. Me, Hana said simply. The probe dug deeper, pulling memories from her mind like fish from deep water. Maltek watched as scenes from her past played on his monitors. Her childhood in Seoul, learning ancient martial arts from her grandmother. Her military training, where traditional techniques mixed with modern warfare theory. Her selection for the space program, where Earth's best minds had prepared her for contact with alien civilizations. Remarkable, he whispered. Your species does not simply train soldiers. You create them. Physical conditioning, mental discipline, psychological preparation, technological integration. You are not just a warrior. You are a weapon designed to function in any environment against any enemy. Is that what frightens you? Hana asked. Maltek's eyes narrowed. Nothing frightens me, human, but I am beginning to understand why the High Command considers your species a threat. The probe pushed deeper, accessing memories that Hana had kept locked even from herself. Her grandmother's final lessons, given in the hospital room where cancer slowly claimed the old woman's body, secrets passed down through generations of warriors who had learned to fight superior enemies. Your grandmother was more than a teacher, Maltek realized. She was a keeper of ancient knowledge, the art of turning weakness into strength, of making enemies into allies, of winning wars without fighting battles. She survived the occupation of Korea, Hana said. She learned that the strongest fortress can be taken by someone who knows how to open doors from the inside. On the screens, more memories flowed. Hana's integration with Earth's advanced cybernetic systems, implants that could interface with any technology designed to let human operatives adapt to alien environments. Memory enhancement that let her learn new languages in hours. Sensory modifications that gave her awareness beyond normal human limits. Your cybernetics are not just tools, Maltek said with growing alarm. They are designed to make you compatible with any technology you encounter, including ours. He tried to shut down the probe, but it was too late. The neural link worked both ways, and Hana's enhanced mind had been copying everything it touched. Krillian security codes, facility schematics, guard rotations, communication protocols. All of it flowed into her enhanced memory systems like water filling a basin. What have you done? Maltek demanded, his composure finally cracking. What? My grandmother taught me. Hana replied calmly. I opened a door. Alarms began blaring throughout the prison complex. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red as every security system suffered simultaneous failures. Energy barriers flickered and died. Blast doors sealed shut, trapping guards in their stations. The artificial gravity in the upper levels reversed, sending anyone not secured floating helplessly toward the ceiling. In the maintenance tunnels, Blue and his skitterling teams moved with surgical precision. They had memorized every system, every weakness, every critical junction. Gas canisters released clouds of sedative vapor into the barracks where off-duty guards slept. Power conduits were severed in carefully calculated patterns that left life support intact while crippling security. How? Maltech whispered as his own office systems turned against him. You assumed that superior technology made you superior beings, Hana said as she stood and walked around his desk. But technology is just a tool. What matters is understanding how to use it. She touched a control panel, and her cybernetic implants interfaced directly with the prison's central computer. Lines of code flowed through her enhanced consciousness, revealing the elegant simplicity beneath the complex systems. Every lock, every barrier, every weapon was controlled by software that followed logical patterns. Your species thinks in terms of dominance and submission, she continued as she rewrote security protocols with thought alone. But my species thinks in terms of cooperation and adaptation. You built a prison to hold dangerous individuals. We built connections that turn individuals into communities. Throughout the complex, 3,000 prisoners found their cells opening simultaneously. But instead of chaos, there was organization. Captain Rexahul led the Mandorian warriors in a disciplined advance on the guard stations. Engineer Zekmor and his Velteran colleagues took control of the technical systems. The Hissic assassins moved through the shadows, neutralizing threats with silent efficiency. All of it coordinated by the skitterling network that carried messages through every tunnel and vent in the complex. All of it guided by the tactical genius of a human who had been trained to win impossible wars. Maltech activated his personal defense systems, but they responded to Hana's commands instead of his. Energy weapons powered down, armor plating retracted. Even his chair rotated to face away from his control panels. You will never escape this world, he said with desperate fury. The fleet will destroy you all rather than let you reach space. The fleet will try, Hana agreed. She knelt beside his chair and placed her hand gently on his scaled neck. But they do not know what they are really fighting. Her fingers found the precise pressure point that would shut down his nervous system without permanent damage. As consciousness faded from his yellow eyes, she spoke softly in Korean, thanking him for the education he had provided. In the arena above, prisoners who had been enemies for decades now worked together with impossible coordination. The revolution that had begun in the mind of one human woman was spreading through every level of the complex like wildfire. And in the depths of space, the UES Retribution detected massive energy discharges from the surface of Torgash. Captain, Shamjisuk stared at the readings in amazement. What is she doing down there? He whispered. Dr. Choi smiled as she recognized the patterns in the energy signatures. She's coming home. The alarm klaxons of the Krillian fleet echoed across space as they detected the massive energy disturbances coming from Torgash. Admiral Koravash stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching tactical displays that showed impossible readings. The entire prison complex is in revolt, reported his sensor officer. Energy signatures indicate coordinated movement of thousands of life forms. How many ships can they possibly have stolen? Korvash demanded. None, sir. The readings are coming from inside the mountain. On the surface of Torgash, the revolution that Hana had built was reaching its crescendo. The prison's arena, once a place of death and entertainment, had become a command center where beings from dozens of species worked together with military precision. Hana stood at the center of it all, her hands moving across captured Krillian control panels as data flowed through her cybernetic implants. The facility's own defensive systems now obeyed her commands, turning the prison's weapons against its builders. Status report, she called out in Galactic Standard, her voice carrying clearly over the organized chaos. Captain Rexahul approached, his forearms managing multiple communication devices. All sectors secured. Guard resistance has collapsed. The Skitterling teams report the transport bays are under our control. Casualties? Minimal. Your gas mixture worked perfectly. Most guards are unconscious, not dead. Engineer Zekmore scuttled. Up to them, his many eyes bright with excitement. The power core is stable, but we cannot maintain this level of output for long. The geothermal taps were never designed for military operations. Hana nodded, still working at her control station. Through the prison's sensor network, she could see Krillian ships moving to intercept the approaching human rescue fleet. The UES Retribution and its escorts were outnumbered 10-1. Blue, she called to the Skitterling leader, who clung to a nearby wall. Are your people ready for the final phase? All tunnels prepared. Blue clicked in response. The mountain. We'll remember this day. What happened next would be spoken of in hushed whispers throughout the galaxy for generations to come. Hana had not simply planned an escape. She had turned an entire world into a weapon. The geothermal energy that powered Torgash came from deep volcanic vents in the planet's crust. The Skitterlings, with their natural ability to navigate tight spaces, had spent months placing shaped charges at critical points throughout the underground network, not to cause destruction, but to redirect flow. When Hana gave the signal, carefully calculated explosions opened new channels in the volcanic system. Superheated gas and steam that had been trapped for millennia found new paths to the surface. The mountain began to shake as pressure that had built for thousands of years sought release. But the energy was not random. Guided by Hana's understanding of the prison systems and Zekmore's engineering genius, the volcanic force was channeled through the facility's power grid. The entire complex became a massive energy weapon pointed at the sky. All prisoners to the transport ships, Hana ordered. Move quickly but stay organized, no one gets left behind. The evacuation proceeded with the same impossible coordination that had marked every phase of the escape. Species that had never cooperated before worked together like parts of a single organism. Mandorian warriors carried wounded Velterans. Hyssik assassins guided groups of smaller beings to safety. Everyone had a role and everyone played their part. In space, Admiral Koravash watched his tactical display with growing alarm. What are those energy readings? They're off the scale. Unknown, sir. It appears to be some kind of directed energy weapon, but the power output is impossible. The answer came as a column of pure volcanic energy erupted from Torgash's surface and struck the lead Krillian cruiser. Shields designed to withstand the most powerful military weapons collapsed instantly. The ship's hull glowed white-hot for a moment, before exploding in a sphere of superheated gas. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Koravash shouted. But the energy beam tracked them, controlled by targeting systems that now obeyed human commands. A second cruiser died, then a third. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. War Captain Vextar's image appeared on the main screen. He was the same alien who had captured Hana months ago, but now his scales were scorched, and his armor was damaged. Behind him, the sounds of battle echoed through what looked like a damaged command center. Admiral, the prison has fallen. The human has taken control of the entire facility. She's using our own weapons against us. Impossible. One primitive mammal cannot. She's not primitive, Vextar screamed. She's using technology we don't understand. Cybernetic integration beyond anything we've seen. She's turned our own systems against us. The transmission cut to static as another volcanic energy beam lanced out from the planet, narrowly missing the flagship. On Torgash, Hana monitored the evacuation while maintaining her attack on the fleet. The stolen transport ships were loading passengers as fast as possible, but there were still too many to save if the Krillians regrouped. Hana, Captain Rexhol called urgently. The human ships are breaking through the fleet perimeter. She looked up at the tactical display and smiled. The U.S. Retribution and its escorts were diving toward the planet at maximum acceleration, using the chaos in the Krillian formation to punch through their lines. Open a channel, she ordered. Captain Nam Jiseok's face appeared on her screen, his expression mixing relief and amazement. Lieutenant Commander Lee, I don't know how you did this, but, Captain, I need immediate evacuation for 3,000 prisoners of various species. Can you handle that many? 3,000? Nam's eyes widened. Hana, what have you been doing down there? Building bridges, she replied simply. The same thing Earth trained me to do. The rescue operation that followed required every transport, ship in the human fleet and several vessels that had been captured from the Krillians. Beings who had been prisoners of the Empire's cruelest jail now found themselves guests aboard human ships, treated with respect and dignity many had never experienced. As the last transport lifted off from Torgash, Hana remained at her control station in the Arena Command Center. The volcanic weapon was still firing, keeping the remaining Krillian ships at bay, but the energy output was beginning to destabilize the entire mountain. Time to go, Blue said from his position on her shoulder. The skitterling had refused to leave without her. In a moment, Hana replied. She was uploading the final subroutines into the facility's computer systems. When the Krillians eventually regained control of the prison, they would find more than just empty cells. Every database had been copied. Every security protocol had been compromised. Every weakness in their technology had been mapped and recorded. The intelligence coup was worth more than the rescue of 3,000 prisoners. Now we go, she said, finally stepping away from the controls. They reached the last transport ship just as the mountain began its final collapse. The volcanic forces that Hana had redirected were too powerful to contain forever. Torgash Prison, the Empire's symbol of absolute control, crumbled into the molten rock from which it had been carved. Aboard the Retribution, Hana stood in the observation lounge and watched the planet fall away behind them. 3,000 former prisoners filled the ship's corridors, representatives of dozens of species who had learned that cooperation was stronger than conquest. Captain Nam joined her at the window. The intelligence reports are calling this the greatest intelligence and rescue operation in human history. How did you know it would work? My grandmother taught me something when I was very young, Hana replied. She said that the strongest walls can be brought down by water if you give it enough time to find the cracks. And the prisoners? 3,000 beings from species that have been fighting each other for centuries? Hana smiled the same gentle smile she had worn since her capture began. Earth didn't just train me to fight, Captain. They trained me to lead. And the first rule of leadership is that everyone wants to belong to something greater than themselves. In the weeks that followed, the former prisoners of Torgash would scatter across the galaxy. Some returned to their homeworlds with new perspectives on cooperation and unity. Others joined the growing human fleet, adding their skills and knowledge to Earth's quiet expansion among the stars. But all of them carried the same message. Humanity was not the weak species the galaxy believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous than conquerors or destroyers. They were teachers, and they had just given the galaxy its first lesson in what humans called hope. The Krillian Empire had captured one human soldier thinking they were containing a threat. Instead, they had given her exactly what she needed to show the galaxy that Earth's greatest weapon was not their technology or their ferocity. It was their absolute refusal to fight alone. And in the depths of space, more human ships were already moving toward systems where other prisoners waited behind alien bars, wondering if anyone would ever come for them. They would not have to wonder much longer.